Dheeraj, we are live. Please
Hi.
go ahead and welcome our viewers. We'll go from there. Yeah.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Really excited to have all of you today with us. My name is Dheeraj Jain. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dot Connect. We help B2B retail tech startups to scale in the US and Europe market with a very hands-on integrated approach of product market fit, product messaging, as well as hands-on sales execution. So prior to this, I've had 20 years of experience working with the likes of Infosys, TCS, Wipro, Tech Mahindra. Uh, Today we have an esteemed panel with us, and the topic that we have is very exciting and defining for our industry. Uh, Even prior the pandemic, we had been witnessing a huge transformation in the industry through the trifecta of changing consumer behavior, of course the Amazon effect, and plus the decades of technology debts that all the retailers had been carrying for long. Now COVID has just been accelerating this whole transformation and the impact thereof. So hence the title for today's discussion, retail Darwinism and steroids. I'm sure all of you will agree with that. I'm joined here today, with Kaustubh Patekar, so good friend and co-host, thought leader in the product and strategy space. He's the founder and the CEO of ProdZen, that does product and strategy consulting for innovative products, as well as service companies, intending to build product organizations. So welcome, Kaustubh. Uh, if you can introduce yourself, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dheeraj. And first of all, warm welcome to all our audience. Thank you for joining us. I think from what we can see, there are thousands of you who have joined us. So I think we certainly appreciate the virtual format. I think it would have been hard to get all of us packed into a conference room. So thank you for joining us. And I'll just do a quick intro, and then we'll, without much ado, we'll introduce our panelists. So, I've worked in the tech industry over 20 years. I studied to be an engineer first at IIT Bombay and then at MIT. And ever since, I've worked on tech products for almost 20 years now. I've lost a little more hair than Dheeraj, but roughly the same amount of time. And apart from that, after having spent so much time building products over the last few years, I've worked with, I started a consulting company, ProdZen, and worked with startups, across verticals, as well as some IT services companies to build products and solutions. And so I've somehow managed to connect my trade with my passion and what I enjoy. So that's been delightful. And my connect with retail, is right from the time I first started working as a product manager, where I spent a lot of time working with Kmart then in the US. To more recently, I was heading product and design at Manthan, which serves retailers all over the world as a software as a service analytics company. So certainly this topic is of great interest. And, we'll of course jump into it a lot more as we get started. But before we do that, Dheeraj, why don't we invite our panelists on stage and, let them weigh in as well. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
first, yeah, thank you. So first, I'd like to call on stage Praveen Srikhande. He is the CIO and CDO of Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. Happens to be a fellow IITB alum. He studied also at IIM Bangalore, and then he's worked at a variety of companies and has had a career at Aditya Birla Group and recently at Aditya Birla Fashion. And for those of you who haven't heard of Aditya Birla Fashion, they have the exclusive rights to brands like Forever 21, Alan Solly, Van Heusen, which is what most people are familiar with. So welcome, Praveen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kaustubh. Good
And
to be here.
yeah, absolutely. And, we'll go around and then, give each our panelists a chance to talk a little bit and share their stories before we jump in. Next, I'd like to call on stage Suhas Devraju. He is a a long-time IT veteran. I think he spent a good part of his career at Hindustan Unilever, both for Unilever India as well as South Asia, and where he was the CIO. And he is a MBA from IIM Calcutta, and recently he also had a stint at Amazon. So I think he's seen both sides of the retail CPG equation. So I'd like to welcome on stage Suhas Devraju. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right.
Dheeraj, why don't you invite the other panelists? So we have all of us on stage, and I think then we can go at it.
Sure. So next panelist would like to invite Shilpa Rao. So Shilpa, I mean, it's very difficult to describe her because she does so many things, but I'll stick to the official introduction, for what she does for TCS. So she heads, the algo retail for TCS, is a product owner for a very successful product called Optumera. And she's very passionate about everything retail and everything that has some sort of algorithm in it. So welcome, Shilpa. Looking forward to have you on the panel. And the next panelist is Rahul Vishwakarma. While he's been called last on the panel, by no means, and that also reflects his age as well. So he's the youngest in this panel as well. So he's had a pretty stellar career in his since he graduated from NIT Bhopal, built world's fastest AutoML platform, and is on a mission to help a lot of retailers and CPGs to do better demand forecasting, which is definitely the need of the hour. So welcome, Rahul, on the panel.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, so now that we have everyone, so probably might be, if you could just, we did a very brief intro about you guys. If you can probably speak a few more words about yourself. And if you can also share maybe, some interesting learning during the pandemic, any, something that you picked up, maybe guitar, maybe cooking, maybe anything, right? Or other than outside of work, we'll talk about a lot about the work challenges that you have faced and how it is shaping your vision for the future. But before, we would like to know a little bit about you personally. So, if anyone maybe Kaustuv, why don't you volunteer first? And
I'll be the guinea pig, no problem.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Dheeraj. So one of my probably more interesting stories is from the time I moved to India, I don't think I ever entered the kitchen because you can hire a maid here, unlike in the US where I was used to cooking often. And then the lockdown happened, and in our family it's me and 3 kids, and the maids disappeared. So I spent the first 3 months cooking, cleaning, mopping, bathroom cleaning, everything. And by the end of that, I got so sick of it that finally I had to deploy my kids. And luckily they were happy enough to help. And, by the 3rd month, at least I could actually cook something they wanted to eat. So that's my story. Thanks.
Okay. Excellent. So given that we started with Praveen. So Praveen, if you would like to give a little bit more detailed introduction about yourself.
Sure, Dheeraj. So I work for Aditya Birla Fashion Retail, and as you said earlier, we are known by the brands, not by the company name itself. So some of our well-known brands are Pantaloons, Louis Philippe, Van Heusen, Allen Solly, Forever 21, American Eagle, and so on. So over 15 different brands, and a mix of something for every segment. So we operate in the menswear, which of course you have famous for. Then Pantaloons is a department store chain, which we also have online brands like Jaipur, which are very niche. Not many have heard of them, and certain boutique brands like Shantanu and Nikhil, which is a partnership that we have for with the designers. Clearly, for us, the lockdown was a big disruptor. I mean, traditional retail in India, largely the focus was always offline. Of course, we had a online presence all along, but clearly this changed everything literally overnight, and it meant a lot of realigning of the businesses, and especially for the digital and IT team, a lot of pressure in the first few months to get almost everything done overnight, right? So things which we are not been doing for last 6 years suddenly have to be done overnight, including starting from getting everybody onboarded on Teams and so on, so that work could continue. But yeah, on a personal level, I guess the big change was realizing that actually you didn't really need to be in an office. I used to I live in Mumbai, and my head office is in Bangalore, and I was pretty much doing 3-4 days in Bangalore every week. And suddenly, it's a realization that, well, maybe you don't really need to be doing that anymore. So it's a great change in lifestyle, which I'm sure and I relate that I can keep doing that going forward, since everybody else is now used to working online and from their homes. So.
Excellent. So we'll come back to that later. Like, do you think if it is gonna continue like this, or it's gonna go back to normal? So, but that will park it for a bit later. So, Suhas, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Dheeraj. Welcome all, and good to be on this panel. My name is Suhas Devraju, 20 odd years of experience in technology, primarily in retail and CPG. So I spent about 13 years in Unilever, playing a variety of roles, primarily in distributive trade, because that's what is prevalent across South Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and to some extent Africa. So did lots of technology and digital product work for distributive trade. Ended up as the CIO, CTO for Hindustan Unilever for South Asia, which is again a very exciting market to work in. After that, did a stint in Amazon, where the focus was on operations, which essentially is fulfillment. And I think that's where a lot of the magic is, right? We go to the e-com site and we order something, and suddenly it appears at our doorstep, sometimes in 2 hours for grocery and fresh. Sometimes within a day if you're a Prime member, and otherwise within 3-4 days mostly, right? There's a lot of technology and actual hands and feet which go into getting that package to your house. And so I worked in that area for some time in Amazon, and it was an absolutely amazing experience to see how the machine works, right? It's literally a well-oiled machine which delivers these millions of packages day in, day out. So that's my experience. Great to be on the panel, and look forward to the discussion. From a pandemic part perspective, I think what changed was the long Bangalore commutes, right? I mean, the time you spend in the car in Bangalore is literally half your life potentially, right? So the last 1 year has been a significant change, that I'm spending less time in commute, more time with the family. So in that sense, it's been very positive, and let's see how it goes.
Excellent.
So true. Nobody's complaining about the commute or
Commute,
the or the airport, right? I think
Absolutely.
thank the pandemic for that.
Yeah, and Shilpa actually, would tell, like, I mean, she is like, even more thankful about no commute given where she lives. So Shilpa, why don't you tell your story?
Shilpa, you're on mute.
I think you're on mute, Shilpa.
Sure. So quick introduction about myself. I am an AI entrepreneur and a product head of an AI-powered strategic intelligence suite. It's called TCS Optumera. And it's like a startup within TCS, which has grown into a mainstream business line for TCS. We have implemented the product for Fortune 500 companies. Many of them have seen multi-billion-dollar uplift in sales and margin dollars. And we've won also several awards, including AI Connects, which is like the Oscars in the AI world, CV Business Awards, and others. Personally, I've worked with over 50 plus retailers, mainly in the area of merchandising, supply chain, and stores. And I also co-own some of the patents that we have for the product. So as Dheeraj was saying, yes, I mean, before the pandemic, I was actually not just the commute from the home to office, but I was on flight practically every week, and yeah, it was crazy. So I was traveling almost 15 to 20 days a month, and it was really crazy. So now with all the time, it's been very interesting. Well, one thing that you really miss while working from home is all the fun that you have in office and the interaction that we have with the colleague. And what we did during the lockdown specifically, and now also we continue, we actually made a lot of fun videos with all of our colleagues with everything, like the costume and the craziest song possible. And a lot of them are actually posted on LinkedIn, and then some were not LinkedIn worthy, so we posted it elsewhere. We did a lot of parties, like we had costume parties, and in fact now also every Friday we have a dance party online. So we are trying to get that fun element also from working from home when you're kind of working remote. So that's been interesting.
Excellent. Maybe we will see some of those videos if time permits during the show.
Absolutely. We're open to join all our parties, so it's really fun. So you should join.
Yeah. Cool. So Rahul.
Yeah, thanks, Dheeraj. First of all, you have already introduced me. I don't want to say a lot more there. Just a little this thing. Probably being the youngest, I can't claim 20 plus or so years of experience. Whatever number, single digit number I have in my hand, I have tried my level best to be able to help the community in any way possible. Currently, we are helping large businesses with demand forecasting, which has been like centuries old problem. We are also happy and proud to say that we are currently running the best engine across the globe, but always there's always a next test that is ahead of us. But apart from that, pandemic definitely gave me to try out the most cliched hobby, which is learning an instrument. So I was able to kind of get some time out and learn to play a ukulele, which is an easier guitar. With absolutely no disrespect to ukulele, I love playing that. But Shilpa, thanks for the advice. I'm gonna definitely try and torture my team with the same as well.
So Shilpa, he just said that you're torturing your team. So
The costume
Okay.
part of it.
Yeah. So maybe when you play ukulele, TCS team can do the dance. So and we will
Absolutely, be my
we'll
guest.
enjoy
Be
just
my
watching the
guest.
both.
You're there.
Be my guest.
Yeah. So okay. So getting
I
back
think by
to
now
business.
our audience is wondering when are we going to talk about retail?
Exactly. As I was saying, so getting back to business. So last year, has been such a defining time for everyone, of course, but especially for the retail industry. So not just like what happened because of the pandemic, but also because what was happening prior to the pandemic. Say, and there has never been a time in last 10, 15 years that any conference or any such event that I've attended in the past where people have not discussed, and Shilpa, Suhas, discussion is about like how the consumer behavior is changing. How do we get to know how do we keep up with that, right? How do we reduce the technology debt of last several decades? And of course, like no disrespect to Amazon, Suhas, but every time like there's been a complaint that Amazon is there. How do we compete against them, right? It's not a fair game and all of that. So it was already happening. A lot of changes are already happening. It's just that, like I said, COVID has accelerated that. It was very interesting to see how different organizations have handled it. Some have done it very well, some not so well. We have seen again since the beginning of 2020, so many bankruptcies being announced almost on a weekly basis, right? But at the same time, there has never been a better time for some companies to gain market share, which we also witnessed, right? They have had one of the best years of their life. So that way, like it's both a vicious circle as well as a virtuous circle, depending upon which side of the table you are. So our like first question for the panel is, now that vaccines are around the corner, right? And hopefully within the next few months, majority of the population is going to get vaccinated. So post that, what does the panel feel that are the is the buying behavior of the consumer going to go back to the pre-pandemic model, or some of the shift is permanent, or majority of the shift is permanent? So with that, I mean, any one of you would like to start?
So, taking a
Sorry.
stab at it right now, taking a stab at it first. Uh, so during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to work with companies manufacturing sanitizers to producing cosmetics, lipstick, and all. Right? We literally saw how the entire demand changed across the various different verticals under CPG from your February month to till today, right now, right? Especially, for example, the two edges of the market, your cosmetics and your sanitizer, right? It did spike like anything, right? Talking from the experience, sanitizer itself kind of grew. We are working with one of the largest ones in the market and one of the most recognizable brands. It grew significantly to a scale of 3x actually, right? A product which was actually growing somewhere between 2 to 3% annually, growing within a scale of 80%, 100% on a month on month was something that really no company was really prepared to handle, right? With whatever planning that they could do, right? And there were a lot of companies jumping into especially this market as well, right? Hand sanitizer, vegetables, and all of these things as well, right? But after May and June, right? So we were helping companies, helping them identify how much demand is actually shifting from offline to online, actually, right? We were actually helping these companies identifying that, right? And we actually started seeing that curve going from March, April, like it was literally peaking every month till June. But post June is when we actually started seeing that no, it is actually now correcting itself. The market is now correcting itself. Of course, the market has increased for certain products, but it has not eaten up the market either. I would actually say that, right? It definitely, the shift did happen, it did catalyze, but it didn't accelerate to an extent where, at least from my experience, I can say that it's a permanent shift, right? Because right after the lockdown, we actually saw, because the kind of brands that we are working with, right? We were helping them identify demand across your general trade, your modern trade, and your e-commerce, right? We started seeing the demand coming, pulled back, not to modern trade actually, to actually general trade again, right? People started buying from the kirana stores again. People started going out. And one of the reasons what we identified, what we were seeing pretty much consistent across, was that people were literally, and this is also an opinion, deduced opinion, was that people were literally fed up of being at home, getting quarantined, and a lot of people were just wanted to kind of just go out. It was pretty much like a short excursion trip, right?
Mhm.
And the convenience that it provided, a store near your house, basically. That's my opinion. I would.
No, absolutely.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, if I go next, essentially what we have seen globally, there has been shift in the consumer behavior overall, and even in India, right? Primarily, as everybody said, right? Everybody was traveling, and then no more commute, and then you don't need, from that perspective, you don't need to have all those work clothes. You can, like, be happy in those PJs and have a work shirt, and you can be there. So I kind of saw a significant shift from an apparel perspective, and because apparel again was considered as a non-essential services, they had to really reimagine when the lockdown was open on how they can really get rid of that inventory that they have, which was like previous season, and globally more so because the seasons matter more internationally, where you have you can't really, when the lockdown happened, it was late winter, early spring, and then when it opened, it was like in the middle of the summer, so you can't really use those items again. So how do you really look at that? You can't get back to that normal again, and you really need to have the cash flow back to pump into your business, and that's where a lot of bankruptcy we saw in those areas. And at the same time, if you see from a grocery perspective, as Rahul mentioned, yes, there was a spike. But if you see overall in the year, retailers from a grocery and essential perspective have grown almost 100 to 200% in many cases.
Can't agree more, Shilpa. Can't agree more, actually. Yeah.
And the shift, like there were essentials which were shifting, but then again there were retailers were having a lot of problems in terms of the delivery perspective. There were trailers and trailers waiting outside the DC, which the retailers could not actually get inside the store. And there were categories which were not performing well, like for example cosmetics. I mean, if people are not going out, they don't need to wear makeup as much.
We actually did. So for 2 months, Shilpa, for 2 months, believe it or not, for 2 months, there was literally next to nil sales, like literally zero.
Absolutely. So, and then these categories, obviously, I mean, they will pick up, but they will pick up in a different way, right?
Correct.
So, so a lot of such is changing, and again, retailers had to make certain, trade-offs in terms of that. When I have supply chain constraints, when I have so much limited space in terms of my DC, in terms of my store, do I really need to carry those 36 varieties of pasta, which a lot of international retailers carry? I can really do with 6, and customers would still buy and still have them. So a lot of those decisions many retailers had to make to kind of really shift to the the new consumer demand and how it has shifted, and really look at what's going to happen from a future perspective. So do I really
Right.
go back to 36, or I can be a good with like a 12 or a 15? Those are the decisions which now retailers are really looking at, and that's a shift which has happened both from a retailer mindset.
Yeah, actually, you're right, Shilpa. That's where even I feel, rather than looking at it from a channel shift, there was a lot of shift that happened between different verticals, right? Now that is something that really, because we are also seeing the similar thing, right? For example, grocery as a market really kind of blew up like anything. Like people are buying a lot more than they were buying before, right? Similarly, there were other markets as well, right? Now again, so basically the point would be that it will start balancing out within next basically couple of months now, right? We are still seeing that a little say unsustainable growth, because since we are looking at multiple data points as well across different, but rather than looking at it as a channel shift, we actually saw it as a vertical mixing and matching different verticals in terms of audience and demand as well.
Let me try to sort of chime in and yeah, so Dheeraj, let me just try to chime in.
Before you go next, just one quick request. So from Backstage, so we want to open up an audience poll as well. So if we can, so audience, so you will see the same question posted to you. If you can also weigh in on that. Yeah, so I'll go next.
Hey, thanks. See, I think it's a very broad question that you asked, right? And my sense is the answer is not uniform, at least on two axes, right? First is by a category perspective, I think each category behaved very differently. And the second is from a consumer perspective, different classes of consumers behave very differently. If you look at, say, cosmetics or personal care, if I talk of that category, clearly, as people mentioned, there was a dip in sales. But what we are also seeing is that more and more of that buying is shifting to online, right? It won't shift radically, say from 10% to 50%. But I think what my sense is it will have a shift maybe of another 10 extra percent of personal care buying going online. But if you look at home care or even foods, I think that would not have as radical a shift as a personal care, right? So you would see a sort of a slower uptake when it comes to e-commerce. Even in the initial days of the lockdown, I think e-com companies were struggling to fulfill orders, right? Because the lockdown really impacting the logistics, and people were really dependent on the offline kirana channel to fulfill their daily needs, right? So my sense is, yes, you will see a shift to online retail, but it depends on categories. Some categories more so, some categories less so. But really, what the pandemic also showed, especially in the initial days of lockdown, is the local kirana is here to stay because he's the most resourceful, he's the most easily approachable, and he's the most how should I say, the one with the best relationship with the consumer, right? So especially when it comes to day-to-day grocery, the local kirana absolutely sort of set the pace. Of course, if you look at what's happened in e-com, there's been a huge uptick, especially when it comes to electronics, wireless, mobile phones, to some extent, personal care. So it's happened. But I think you need to look at it in a much more nuanced way, different categories, different behaviors. Also, rural India, less e-com, slower uptake than say urban India, right?
Very
Honestly, but
interesting.
just an
Sorry.
off the topic thing. Amazon literally still was a lot more stabler than other e-commerce, as we at least saw in different categories. Amazon is still performing a little more stable than, for example, any other e-retailer that was there, because there you were seeing demand up and down and stockouts like anything actually. Go ahead, Kaustubh.
No, absolutely. The engine of operations, whichever e-com retailer has a good engine for inbounding as well as outbound to the consumer. I mean, so some companies are able to recover better, quicker, and crank up that engine. Some companies take longer. But I guess everybody struggled in that March-April timeframe when there was a complete lockdown. And at that time, the only savior was the local vegetable vendor and the local kirana store.
So on apparel, I think what we saw is that I mean the shift to e-commerce is a secular trend, right? It's been happening the world over, and there was a certain pace that it was happening. And India was probably just slow. I mean, in most other markets, e-commerce was already in the 25 to 35% kind of range. You know, China probably being the highest. India was still in the single digits, and in a way, the pandemic pushed that that inflection point, right? What probably would have happened in several years suddenly happened in months. I mean, we literally saw our e-com business like monthly sales tripling in several brands between Jan and July, right? So there was a big change. The question on whether this will sustain, I think it's an inflection point. So yes, it has given that push to e-com. Customers who would otherwise never have experienced or thought of buying apparel online have experienced that and will probably continue to buying certain things. But again, a lot depends on within apparel, certain things, let's say innerwear or shoes, where not much changes. It'll probably be a lot more moved a lot more online. In certain other categories where shopping is an experience. I mean, it's not just about going and picking up something and buying, but it's about browsing. It's about trying it on and then deciding. Probably it'll continue to with the habits will. Some of the habits will sustain, and at least what you're seeing in the last quarter during festive season, the footfall has clearly, significantly improved as compared to the previous quarters. Of course, maybe still not at the level of the previous year. So the trend I would say is inflection point from an e-com where it will bump up probably from single digits to only maybe 15-20% kind of trend over the next couple of years, while offline will need to imagine to become more omni. So I think the customer journeys are clearly moving into a mix of online and offline. So people who never looked at online probably are now going to browse online and maybe decide on shopping offline or pay an order offline, and retailers will have to be ready to do that. So that's how I think the market will evolve. So clearly, all retailers have to be prepared for e-com, and the strategies about whether you do it yourself, whether you work with the marketplaces, and so on will evolve as they have internationally. But the trend is clearly there to stay.
Yeah. Just one quick follow-up, Praveen. I think Shilpa made a comment that now because we are all home, we are no longer buying fashion and only buying pajamas. Is that really true from what you see?
Yeah, I see the product mix change. In fact, in March, April, we completely shifted our manufacturing to masks and PPEs. Right, so 2 months was just that, and masks became one of our biggest sellers. In fact, we were at some point we were the largest sellers of masks on the marketplace. A product we never had till March. The shift again, the other shift was to casuals. Right, really buying formals was not happening, and everybody moved to casuals. And again, that change will depend on how work from home evolves. I mean, if office life gets back to normal, probably formals will come back to some to an extent. But
Another couple of months, Praveen.
we have to be agile and adjust to that trend, and which we did. I mean, all our brands moved their merchandise from formals to a lot more casual, and came up with new products and so on. But that's something which any brands have to react into. So, but yes, the trend was there in the last few months. Whether that will remain, difficult to say. It all depends on how the office working evolves rather than consumer preference.
I mean, to that point, for us from TCS perspective, we really took this pandemic to the stride and really decided that, this is the way forward in terms of, getting the work from home. And it's officially announced that by 2025, we'll be 25% in office and then otherwise elsewhere. And that elsewhere could be anywhere. So that shift we are seeing not just in TCS, but we are also seeing that shift happening with a lot of our customers and globally everywhere. So it's a balance that we'll get towards, and that will obviously get in some of the consumer trends to shift.
Yeah, so I think the formal clearly, I mean, even before the pandemic, right? We have seen our product mix across brands shift from formals to casuals across the board. So instead of Louis Philippe, it was a lot more of LP, in the sort of iconic men's brand. But so that's been happening. But clearly, this gave a push to it, and yeah, I guess a lot more people working at home probably means a lot more casual wear than formal.
So that brings us to an interesting idea that, hey, certainly all of us are in tech or tech related work. So we have the luxury of working from home or remotely. That's probably not true for most of the population. That's one point. And the other is, especially since we are talking about fashion, I mean, sort of a relevant provocation I want to have here is, how are retailers reimagining the stores, right? Because personally, and maybe in part because I'm a little older, I don't think I would enjoy or really get what I want online whenever I buy clothes, right? I don't buy clothes very often, but when I do, I prefer to go into a store, get a feel for what I want, and then buy, right? So that brings us to the interesting point is, I mean, as retailers or as solution provider to retailers, I mean, is there a reimagining of the store itself? And if so, what is that? What is your take on that? And we can go around and let have everyone weigh in, please.
Okay, so I mean, being in fashion, maybe I can start. So what we seeing is first, of course, was that the store also becomes a delivery point, right? And so we had already rolled out what we call as BOSS, right? Buy online, ship from store. The traction we got on that during the pandemic, we pretty much moved all our stores to BOSS, so we could pretty much enable delivery from everywhere, which we started doing, which of course gives a much faster delivery, and we started doing it even across marketplaces. Like we enabled that the marketplaces could push an order into a store and have it delivered locally in a very quick time. So that was the immediate thing that changed. The in-store experience as well, what we see will become that journey will become a blend of online offline. So we believe that it will become a lot more hyper local, where if you want to shop in a store, you don't have to necessarily go to the store. You can browse online, or if you walk into the store, you can still open up an app and use that to make your discovery easier in the store, and do things like self checkout or manage alterations and things like that. So we see some of those trends catching on, and those are the ones where we are working on building as we go. So yes, it will become reimagined. So omni-channel and if from a store perspective will become far more important, and both driven by changing customer behavior and the need of stores to have alternative channels, not just walk-in shoppers from fulfillment.
Just a point to add with what Praveen is saying there. It actually became something of a strategy, especially around lockdown. All the brands or companies which had, say, their own stores, right? They could actually use those stores to kind of convert it into a quasi warehouse, right? Because there were lockdowns and there were restrictions on transportation as well. For example, a lot of beverage company kind of lost out on literally thousands of crores of worth of inventory because they couldn't travel it. They couldn't transport it to different location. So stores which actually could, or the brands which actually could kind of have had localized presence, right, could actually convert their stores into warehouses. That is what we also started proposing our own customers in terms of how can you kind of create your supply chain so responsive that you can, even if there are lockdowns, citywide lockdowns as well, that your demand never dries up, and if there is a demand, you are able to kind of fulfill those demands as well, that your opportunity, you're not losing out on an opportunity as well.
No, absolutely. I think, Rahul, what you said is very valid. And I would sort of extend that to say that it's not just own stores which are acting as dark stores for fulfilling
Correct. Exactly.
We are also beginning to see a lot of partnerships, right? Jio is trying to tie up with local Kirana stores. Amazon is tying up with more. So it's becoming a truly omni-channel journey. Not so much, not just in apparel, but if you look at
across all
CPG,
the categories.
Definitely CPG. There are people who are now ordering online, but a local store is delivering it. It cuts down the logistics complexity significantly. Last mile logistics are exceptionally complex and costly, and having that partnership which is able to do hyper-local delivery makes it a lot more manageable and palatable. We're seeing it in apparel.
Sorry.
We're seeing it in CPG.
Yeah. No, it also improves your value proposition.
Sorry, go ahead. So let me just finish. I'm sure we've seen it in a few more categories also. I mean, we'll definitely see this in wireless and electronics also. So you will see this concept of omni-channel, and omni-channel not just being your own stores, but partnerships which are servicing customer demand.
Correct. And it also
because cost to serve is very important, and cost to serve, if you have this partnership mix, becomes a lot more manageable from a cost perspective. Sorry, go ahead, Rahul.
Sure. So it also improves a lot on your value proposition as well, because see, the only thing what basically, for example, GT has to offer when it has to kind of go on a war with e-commerce is the kind of convenience that GT offers, right? To say the tier 2, tier 3 janta in the country, right? The convenience, like within it's a store is a stone throw away distance. The moment this omni-channel strategy comes into picture, that actually really will accelerate the adoption of e-commerce, or say a lot more organized retail, right? Especially converting. So actually, especially in Bangalore, right? As clearly pointed out by Suhas, Jio is currently tying up with a lot of Kirana stores, and not just Kirana store, but say a lot of these, how do I put it, supermarket stores, which also fall under general trade as a channel, right, which work under the distributor model. They have very large real estate, right? So a lot of such stores kind of, it became difficult for them to kind of sustain the rentals or the recurring operational costs. So they started actually converting those into warehouses, and there exists actually 3 different types of model right now in the country around the dark stores or the cloud stores, however you want to put it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, it's a little tricky to manage who's starting and stopping. So let's keep the ball rolling. And I think we have a few questions from the audience as well. So we'll try to.
Shilpa had something to say, actually.
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, sure. So I was saying that one of the trend that we are seeing globally from the retailers is that the stores are becoming more of experience center and more as places where people come to experience service. So we are working with one retailer, pet retailer, where they have got pet clinics and grooming centers, a lot of those in the store, so that you get the customers in and experience it, right? Also, if you look at electronics retailer that we're working with, they have got the entire staff to actually kind of up their service. So especially when you kind of look at Wi-Fi at home, and you don't know how do you get the Wi-Fi at every corner in the house. You need somebody to go and talk to, and really figure out that how do you get Wi-Fi there, and you don't really know who do you call up, right? And you don't always have
Buy
the
a booster, Shilpa.
yeah. So that's where the experience matters, and that's the experience which can really help retailers differentiate from somebody like Amazon, who's offering
Correct.
lower prices, because that's where you actually go. So that's what we are seeing retailers turn their stores into experience center, and also latching onto the store becoming more of delivery hubs. There are a lot of third party partners who are actually shopping at the store. So you have Swiggy in India,
Correct.
and you see
Correct.
in US, and it's difficult for a customer to shop with those because they're like really fast and they pick up all the items and you get out of stock very soon. So how do you kind of manage between that experience that you have in the store, at the same time how do you make the store efficient for the pickups becomes a challenge, and that's how the stores are transforming to kind of give a balance.
You're absolutely right. Shilpa. Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Kaustubh. It's okay. Yeah.
no, I was just going to summarize, and then maybe we will jump to a audience question. So, I think we certainly heard the perspective on fashion, in terms of just simply, changing your mix and evolving rapidly, which I think, has happened across the categories. We've also heard about the perspective that some categories jumped, and that was a temporary jump, and then it kind of came down. But of course, e-commerce as a whole, the adoption has grown across the country. And to Suhas's point, I think very interesting perspective on, hey, that is not actually uniform across categories. It's different by category. It's different by geography. And Shilpa also added that, sometimes the category mix itself is changing, right? Especially with your example on the grocery, right? Do you need 15 varieties of pasta or 3 or 2, right? I think when we were in lockdown in Hungary, even 1 would have done. So, I think that has changed the consumer perspective. And, a couple of you also brought up the point about competing in the time of Amazon. And I think we have a similar question. And I think it's good, Suhas, you are ex-Amazon, so you can talk more freely now. But it's about, what are some of the points a budding or an early stage, retailpreneur, somebody who is looking to create a new brand or a retail product, how does somebody like that compete, right? In this age of e-commerce, in the age of Amazon, or, sort of dominance of multi-category stores. And, something similar related is also the idea of the DTC brands, right? Which have taken off. So, let's see if, you guys can weigh in. And
dark stores, Kaustubh, dark stores. Dark stores
Okay.
is the only way actually for brands to really kind of capture the market share, to be honest, and especially and which is where its biggest potential comes into picture, right? Which is how soon can you deliver? For example, Amazon currently is looking into Amazon, Flipkart, all of these major are looking into kind of get down the delivery times from say a single day to even 2 hours to 4 hours, right? That is exactly where brands can actually play a key role right now. Or, for example, single DTC brands or smaller e-commerce companies as well, or startups as well, where in terms of bringing down the channels, partnering with a local store, focusing on a geography or defining is where probably kind of that gives the biggest advantage to anyone when they have to kind of really up the level playing field.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think good points, Rahul. I think to add to what Rahul said, essentially, if you are a budding retail entrepreneur, you want to launch your retail site. I mean, I think the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is the customer value proposition you're delivering, right? What is it that you're doing differently vis-a-vis, say, an Amazon or a Flipkart? Are you offering significantly lower prices? Are you offering a better mix of ASINs? Are you offering better delivery? Are you offering a better app experience? What is it that you're offering? Because if the customer proposition is strong, and if you get the strategy right, then you will have customers coming into buy your product, right? So you call it product market fit, you call it customer value proposition. Essentially, what is it that you're offering which is different from what Amazon is offering? Amazon offers a great variety, right? The selection is huge. They offer very competitive prices, and they offer superbly fast delivery times, which are reliable. If they say it's 2 hours, it's 2 hours. If they say it's 2 days, it's 2 days normally.
Correct,
or less,
correct.
right? So what is the value proposition that you are giving, and how valuable is it for the consumer or the customer? So that essentially is what people need to think of. Once they've got past that, then of course, how do you manage the operations, right? Because there is the tech part of it, which is getting the e-commerce shopper to come to your app or come to your website. But then how do you reduce bounce, right? How do you get him to come back? Do you do subscription or do you do loyalty? How do you get him to come back? When he comes, how do you make sure that he puts things into the cart? Is there any value there? And then finally, the whole actual hands and feet on the ground, the logistics, how do you deliver it? And then at some point in time, how do you make sure that the cost of all this is manageable, right? So start with the customer value proposition. If that's strong, then the rest of it can follow if you do things right.
Actually, to add to what Suhas is saying that this is actually a couple of things that we started experimenting with a few of our customers, which are actually trying out, retailers who are trying this out, where how do you retain those customers, right? So one of the things that we actually are currently experimenting, and in a very small location, is, can you really predict their order itself? Can you predict their order and the moment and create that basket for them before even they come on your store and have to go through that entire assortment or selection of products that are there? Now, these are far-fetched, but that's what technology and data gets you, right? And you actually can. That's the ability that you have today, which you didn't have probably 10 years ago. But ability to retain, if the customer has come to you once, he or she definitely saw some value there. And you probably will have to kind of keep making sure that that same value is getting delivered again and again.
Very interesting. Why don't we let Praveen and Shilpa weigh in on this question? And that might lead us nicely into the poll on AI, AR, ML, AR, VR. Is that going to replace people? But before that, let Praveen and Shilpa weigh in.
I should hide somewhere.
I would have a take on what works.
Intelligence. So, and that's actually a good segue, Kaustubh, because knowing your customer and understanding who your customer is and what are their wants and needs is very important. And when you are looking at a big, from a customer perspective, a big pool, and you're looking at understanding their demands and what they want at that point in time, and then being able to offer them a price, being them to offer experience becomes very difficult if you are not leveraging the power of technology. And getting in terms of, as Rahul was saying, anticipating some of the demand, anticipating what they would need, again, that would require some of the intelligence. Now, going back to the operational side from a supply chain perspective and others, supply chain today for most retailers are some things which are completely optimized in terms of optimizing in silos. So DC is completely optimized, your store is optimized, but they don't really often talk to each other, and that's the reason why you see all those trailers which are lying outside and not able to kind of get in. That's where solving that problem of actually getting the DC and getting the store and the transportation and ensuring that the transportation cube is utilized, getting the route is optimized, all of these to talk to each other from a complexity perspective. It's a really complex problem, and from a mathematical, if you want to kind of solve it with the data, it's like super complex, looking at so many factors, looking at so many constraints. And that's where the power of AI comes in to really solve this and really help them to get granular, get them to a very specific need perspective. So supply chain is today not really looking at the demand side, not really looking at understanding what the customer needs. If you can integrate all of that together, and that's where the power comes in for retailers to drive that.
Actually, Shilpa, that's where, using that as a segue, that is where, for example, a couple of years ago, supply chain used to be very, for example, bottoms up, right? The sales guys used to kind of get those orders from the shops, and then kind of the orders used to get, that's how things used to get manufactured, which is usually about 60 to 90 days lead time, even inside, even for domestic trade. Right. Currently, and especially what really got accelerated due to COVID was moving away from that sort of planning to a lot more responsive supply chain, right? Where you need to now anticipate, because you can't have sales force go from store to store, because that itself is not allowed. What actually we feel, and where we are right now seeing technology leading the supply chain to the next level, is moving, I mean, from responsiveness to even getting to proactiveness, right? Rather than, I mean, anticipating demand and then being prepared for it, rather just create the orders itself and try to it's more like throwing a lot of darts on the wall and see what sticks, right? Just with a higher accuracy, basically.
So I would
Praveen, yeah.
say, it's probably the best time to be a retail entrepreneur. It's never been better, right? Today, the barriers that big brands and big companies used to have are all broken down, right?
Correct.
Today you can start a business with very low investment, as long as you have a great idea and the way to build a big brand. The cost that you need to put in to build a storefront, online, it's all OPEX. How to reach your customers through digital marketing, you can do it a lot easier than having to pay TV channels, right? How to do your distribution? Well, I mean, just write on Amazon and Flipkart, right? There's no easier way to sell your product than going on marketplaces. So I would say for a retail entrepreneur, it's the best of times, right? So all you need is a big idea, nothing more. And everything else, including funding, is available at the top.
I think in the current liquidity, that's going to be easy. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Dheeraj.
No, I was just weighing in, on the physical retail perspective also, because we heard a lot of views around, how the entry barriers have come down from the online, retailing perspective. But if you look at from the physical retailing perspective also, see, physical retail isn't dead, right? It's just that a mediocre physical retail is dead, right? So for you, even today, if someone can deliver an exceptional experience with great convenience, customers would still love to come and shop physically, right? So that opportunity is definitely there. So it's not that I just want to bring in that flavor of the physical retail as well, that there is an opportunity we are seeing that even in the times of pandemic, as we are coming out of it, how some of the people in physical retail, they're doing phenomenally well. They're seeing time of their life by just doing some smart basically mix of that assortment, convenience, experience, all of it put together, right? And that's also winning formula in physical retail as well.
Yeah, I think just one nuance to all this, right? I mean, we are talking a lot about B2C, but you are seeing a lot of change happening on the B2B side also. The impact of, say, your Amazon or Flipkart on B2B has also been significant. That retailer is now more looking for an Amazon experience in terms of where he buys from, how he pays, and what kind of delivery experience he gets, right? So traditional models for distribution in CPG and beyond are beginning to sort of see changes because of the whole technology and e-com experience coming to the B2B side also, right? So you will see in Kirana stores and the way the distributors and wholesalers operate. I mean, maybe Praveen can talk of how it works in the apparel space, but you see some of those technologies, analytics, AI, ML, routing, new supply chain models, downstream supply chain models coming into B2B also. So it's not just B2C which is getting affected and transforming, it's also B2B. And to some extent, it was also accelerated by the lockdown, right? Because
B2B is a lot more. B2B is a lot more, actually. Especially the link between,
model of a salesman coming to a store, taking an order, delivering 3 days later, broke down to some extent when the lockdown happened. And then retailers were looking for alternative ways for fulfilling their demand, right? And so you will see some of that also accelerating to some extent.
Sure. Something like just an addition to that point, something like a relationship between a store and the distributor, right? It usually is very strong, right? Because there is a trust factor that is there, and because of which the credit is usually kind of passed on, and a lot of facilities are applied, right? We saw around us, right, that getting disrupted, right? Stores getting a lot more options, a lot more flexible options in terms of getting the inventory, fulfilling their shelves. I mean, replenishing their shelves at the best price as well, and with very flexible repayment facility as well.
Yeah, I think the whole model of, as you said, B2B, right? See, it is cutting down the intermediaries, right? Earlier, you had to have 2, 3 levels of distribution because you couldn't directly reach the consumer or even the frontline retailer. Today, you can do that a lot easier. So, what's happening on B2C? The next step is to take it to be to the first level retailer, right? The distribution chain can be made a lot narrower or shorter than what it used to be earlier. So,
Very interesting. And I think we ran an audience poll on the impact of AI ML. And I think everybody in the audience seems to agree that it's major impact. So I think we have all techies logged in, not enough people from the business. But,
No, even business would accept that right now, Kaustav. I'm not kidding. And I'm telling you right now. So there was a hype cycle around AI, right, where everyone like, what is this technology? And people just wanted to talk about it. Right now, when it is actually, especially during this time, right, what also accelerated, this is something I can tell you from my personal experience, right? What also accelerated was now they want to see the result, one. But two, they also want to kind of go behind the curtain and understand, okay, for example, how it is generating, right? Now the questions are around, okay, how can you defend these forecasts, these predictions, these models, right? That's actually becoming a more question now. So business side also knows how it is, and they are, at least some of them are positive about it, hopefully.
So here on this point, before we sort of dive in, I think I'd definitely like to sort of draw the line, right? I think Rahul, your company actually sells an AI solution. I think
Yes.
Shilpa is also head of AI solutions. So I know you guys want to sell, and I understand that. I want to see if Suhas and Praveen are buying, right? So
Right.
why don't we, we heard from you, Rahul. Let's hear from Praveen or Suhas, and then we'll go back to Shilpa and come back again. Why don't we hear?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I think Rahul already said that these work, and we do believe they work. But like in our sense and learning has been that it's not just the technology, right? I mean, in fact, using what I read somewhere else, that in a solution solving a problem, analytics is a tool, right? The algorithm itself is probably 15%. The data is another 30%. And the rest, 55%, is actually change management. Because to get the organization to buy in and believe
That's a lot.
the analytics and whatever, ML, AI, to drive their business is the biggest challenge.
Oh, it is so true. It is so true, Praveen. It is so true, yeah.
And often the challenge becomes solving that data problem first, because often you're not having the data, or you're not collecting, or it's not in the right format, or needs to be cleansed or transformed and so on, which is a IT problem. But still, the bigger problem is always change management, because I think some people are up the curve and they realize this is not panacea. This is not solve the problem, every problem, and give a perfect answer. This is it's up to you how you use the tool and what you make of it, and then you use it to run your business. And that's what we might take. But yes, the openness to use technology is completely there in most retail organizations.
Thanks for weighing in. I think we'll, before we go to Suhas, we'll go to Shilpa. I think it's companies like TCS who benefit from all the data problems. So we'll definitely let her weigh in.
So my view is this, right? See, I think any AI ML solution, any analytic solution requires significant amount of time to be embedded, right? If today you start predicting to a salesman what he needs to sell to a store, first, your accuracy of prediction will not be more than 50-60% because your model is very rudimentary and you don't know which data has what impact. Second is you need that prediction to be there at the right time with the right person for it to be effective. So to get that tooling right takes some time. And third is, as Praveen said, change management is not easy. The salesman is going to say, my incentive is based on what I do to meet my targets. Your recommendation is great, but let me do my job, right? So my experience has been that you can build models. There is no off-the-shelf model or product that you can just take and plug and play and it will all work like magic. It won't happen. Models need iterations, and they require anywhere between 18 to 24 months to embed properly and give reasonably accurate results. I have seen accuracy go up in cases from 60% to 75, 80%, but it's taken 2 to 3 years of refining the data, refining the parameters, convincing people, and then embedding it as part of a ongoing process. I've seen this with salesman recommendations in CPG retail. I have seen this with forecasting. I have seen this with pricing, right? So is there a magic bullet like SageMaker that you can take away from AWS and say, here's the model, take it, and it will give you fantastic results? Sorry, not happening. Put in the right data scientists, put in the right business leaders, ensure that there's sponsorship from the leadership, and give it 18 to 24 months of sustained effort, and it'll work. In specific cases, you can try to fit in AI ML everywhere, but in many cases it just doesn't fit. Try to do AI ML to predict sales on e-com Amazon will not happen, because Amazon sales or e-com sales are so, how should I put it, unpredictable almost. So try to put a demand forecast for e-com sales for beauty or CPG or home care. Very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Possibly not the right business problem to try to solve it all, right? So pick up the right business problem, put the right data scientists, give it time, drive change management, and in 18 months, you may have some significant results or good results.
Suhas, I have a differing opinion.
Yeah, Rahul will come to you, but let Shilpa weigh in. I think she's also head of algo retail. So I think let's find out whether they're selling more algos. Yeah.
So if you see from a retailer perspective, right? So today the retail margins are like super wafer thin. And anything that you do to really help them to understand customers better and also to help bring in the operational efficiencies is something which is significant. And many retailers have done a lot of things. It's not that it's not because it's their core business, right? So many have optimized their supply chain. Many have done things on customer behavior and others. Now, where is that next level of growth going to come in? Because you are seeing currently, you are seeing 200% growth from the grocery perspective due to the different buying behavior in pandemic. The next year, to kind of sustain 100% on top of the current 100% is going to be difficult. So how do you get to that is a big problem which retailers are facing today, and that's where the power of understanding this with the help of modeling the customers, modeling the customer behavior now, and also modeling the customer behavior as they go in future, considering all the different factors. And there is this level of uncertainty also built into those models, help you to kind of get there. And to Suhas's point, I mean, like some of the points that he mentioned in terms of the organization also being there and getting ready for it is important. At the same time, there are advances in technology, in which Rahul would kind of agree to, which have helped to kind of cross some of those barriers which were there in the past. So there are newer technologies which can really help you to look at skim through the data which is not there, look at through the data sufficiency issues, look at the issues that were there, because even AI is learning and even the it is evolving. So it has evolved to a point where a lot of these issues can be addressed, and it can really help you to get to a more plug and pay. See, today we are all using AI. I mean, it is all there in our phone, right? So and it doesn't require a lot of change management from that perspective. We got used to Google Maps, we got used to Gmail, we got used to a lot of all the other things. So it is about delivering.
It needs to be invisible. It needs to be invisible.
It has to be invisible. So if it requires a lot of change management, or if it requires a lot of effort, then the adoption, as Rahul sorry, as Suhas absolutely mentioned, it is difficult then. So how do you kind of get to that is something that we are offering to our customers. How do you make it easy for customers to adopt so that the change effort it's more natural rather than you don't have to teach people to how to operate on Google Maps. So you don't really have to teach people how to operate on
I mean,
phones. So,
even in case of machine learning products, right? You should not. It should really kind of just exist without being there. That's what we have kind of in terms of after experimenting multiple years in identifying what is the right UX for this thing. What we have identified, it literally should be invisible. But actually, coming to the point what Suhas was mentioning, Suhas, I beg to differ to what you're saying, but I completely understand where you're coming from as well, because this is something that I just genuinely hear from everyone, and this was something that kind of took us 3-4 years to really solve for that problem. In terms of implementation, becoming a bigger challenge, right? You're right. In general, AI solution really does take a lot of time because it needs to kind of stabilize. It needs to kind of deliver consistent accuracy, right? The model preparation itself takes a lot of time, but to something where we see firsthand and we are builders of those things. Yes, off-the-shelf solutions are possible in AI. It's just that the implementation approach should be a little different than how it is applied. Oh yeah. So
So just a quick time check, guys. I think this will probably shut in next 30-40 seconds.
But
so I think
just one thing, because that was on my
we'll talk outside this forum.
Yeah.
Demand forecasting is possible on cosmetics.
Let's talk.
So we'll have a discussion offline. So
yeah, I think but I don't think I think we should get a few more minutes. So why don't we actually use this time to wrap up and go around and give everyone a chance to summarize, maybe in a minute or so. I'm sure I think it was a very interesting discussion. I think very interesting viewpoints from experience, from what you're pitching, what you are seeing in the market, not just in India but even outside. And a lot of interesting stories to tell as well. But before we sort of go into closing, I think we planned a little rapid fire. I think we'll go through maybe 4 or 5 questions, and I'll ask a question. We'll go around. I think Dheeraj and I are excused since we came up with the questions, but we'll go to the 4 of you, and I think you can answer in agree, disagree. Not in my lifetime, or if you completely disagree, not in a million years. Right? So agree, disagree, not in my lifetime, not in a million years. And I'll just go and then we'll go around. I think we can fix the order. I think we'll go Rahul, Shilpa, Suhas, Praveen, because that's the order I see on my screen. I don't know if you see a different order, but we'll go Rahul, Shilpa, Suhas, Praveen. And I think we have about 5-6 questions. I think Dheeraj, if you come up with one more, you can pitch in. And agree, disagree, not in my lifetime. Okay. So first question is, I love remote work so much that I'll work remote forever.
Not in a million years.
Shilpa.
I agree.
Suhas.
Not in my lifetime.
Not in your lifetime. Praveen?
agree.
Oh, so that is quite split in the middle.
Absolutely. And I think something I referred to earlier, AI, AR, VR will replace humans selling in stores.
Disagree, actually, because it's a very generic.
No explanation. Go ahead. Disagree. Suhas?
I agree.
Praveen?
Not in my lifetime, and since I'm the oldest, it's not that much.
Okay. Something which one of you alluded to is this whole predictive part. Retailers will sell you stuff before you need to shop, right?
Completely agree.
Okay. Shilpa?
Agree.
Suhas?
Disagree.
Disagree.
Love shopping for fashion online.
Partially
No.
agree, partially disagree.
I
Shilpa.
absolutely love it. I'm like 100% online.
Okay. Suhas,
Disagree.
disagree. Praveen, of course, no.
Agree.
Agree. I think that seems to be more of a personal perspective and not the company perspective. So, I think one last provocation, I think, because we talked a lot about, we spoke to retailpreneurs, and I think a lot of DTC brands have taken off. DTC brands are the future, traditional brands are dead. What do you think, Ram?
Agree.
Shilpa?
No, disagree.
Vas?
Disagree.
Disagree. Praveen, what do you think?
Disagree.
I think this seems to be a lot more uniform. I think with that, I will wrap up the rapid fire round.
So I have one more, Costa.
Of course, go
I
ahead.
mean,
Yes,
yeah.
please.
So I have, this crazy theory. So I want to get your opinion. So if there's anyone, who could actually challenge Amazon. So I have, a name in mind, and that is called Shopify. So if Shopify acquires FedEx, right, and pivots into a marketplace model, could they, do they have a chance to, at least compete, if not beat Amazon? So that's my question.
If it is compete, agree.
It's I mean, I don't know why we feel that nobody can compete with Amazon. I think we are keeping that a bit too high on the pedestal. I mean, even in India, there are many who are, at least two others who are pretty strong at that, and in other countries, many more. So so sure. I mean, yeah.
So the question is Praveen, question is to compete at that scale at a global stage. So of course, that way, like a lot of people are competing against them. The idea is, could there be another Amazon? If someone has a chance to do it, so again, my theory is like, if we were to get Shopify and FedEx together and they convert it into a marketplace model, so they have now global access, they have, millions of sellers on board immediately, and they can do what Amazon Prime does today.
Yeah. So just a couple of. Sorry. Go ahead, Praveen. You finish and then I'll join in.
No, I was saying, when you say compete, it doesn't mean it has to be, let's say, in the same space or the same way, right? So you will have to differentiate, right? You cannot, let's say, compete with Amazon the way Amazon does it, right? But so everybody's trying a different model, which is as long as you are competing. So from my perspective, what is competition is that you are establishing a niche where you're able to run a profitable business. If you're able to do that, that's good enough to be able to compete. That would be my take.
Okay.
So I think my view is somebody like a Walmart, Target is actually in a good position to compete, at least in some big markets. And India is not a big market still from a e-com perspective, right? So I think a Walmart, Target, and an Alibaba in specific markets, or a Reliance Jio in specific markets, you will have plenty of competitors. I don't think that would ever be a monopoly. And it's not a monopoly today, right? Will they do it in all markets at all, in all categories? I don't know. I don't think so. Right?
Cool. So on that note, so guys, looks like Costa already got kicked out of the platform, maybe for overstaying.
No, he's coming.
Yeah.
So
I was
okay,
kicked
Costa
out
is back.
and delivered a warning, which I'm now here to deliver to you.
No, so I think we had a lovely conversation. I think we can probably go on for another 3 hours, but I guess we will do that in a different setting, different place, maybe over a beer or two. So thanks everyone for participating, in this lovely discussion, and looking forward to continuing this and more during the course of the year, and see how 2021 shapes up, and see if any of your views changes then. And we'd love to have maybe a dipstick survey in few months' time.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Yes, absolutely. I think it was pleasure, and I'm glad you guys took off the gloves eventually. So that helped. And thank you for the audience for joining. I think it was a very interesting discussion, and I hope we'll continue the dialogue in person, hopefully by next year. Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.